Destination Medicine is a collaborative initiative of regional training hubs. With first-hand lessons learned from those who have gone before, this podcast is designed to assist and inspire anyone interested in pursuing a medical career in rural and regional Australia. Nobody could convince Dr. Nathan Blake to live and work in the city. He says a regional life is much easier, not just because it's easier to get around, but because of the opportunity to work closely and learn more from your teachers, and because the cost of living is so much lower. And he loves his work as a psychiatry registrar in Orange. Dr. Blake starts by describing how a long drought helped him decide to become a doctor.
Yeah, so when I was a kid, essentially, I grew up between sort of Tamworth and Walker, essentially, and I sort of grew up on a farm in the middle of a drought. And I think during that time, things were really, really tough on the land. And I remember my dad sort of saying to me one day when we were drenching sheep and there was dust flying everywhere, he's like, "Nathan, if you've got a brain cell in your head, do anything but farming." So I thought that was sort of the beginning, I guess. And also as a kid, I was exposed to a number of really, really good GPs because I had really bad asthma. As sort of time went on, I got to a point where I went into high school and I was sort of getting to this point, what am I going to do if I'm not going to have a life on the land? And so basically what I decided to do is I thought about, I really was enjoying science, biology and chemistry. And I thought, why don't I give medicine a go? I wonder how I'd go into that. So I interviewed some of my GPs, so Dr. Miriam Grotowski and Dr. Gillian Rawlings, and they sort of painted a pretty cool picture of what medicine was like. And then sort of serendipitously, one of my brother's best friend's dad was one of the senior clinicians at Tamworth ED, essentially, Dr. Phil Hungerford. And so I ended up spending a day gardening with him, which was amazing. And we talked about medicine and what it was like, pros and cons, and what you sort of need to be aware of before you start. And I was sort of got really keen and really inspired. So yeah, I think that sort of started the journey into me becoming a doctor, I suppose.
You then went on to take a rural placement. What are your reflections on that experience looking back?
To put in a broader context, I did my undergraduate degree at biomedical science at Newcastle. Then I got into postgraduate medicine at Sydney. And when I sort of came to Sydney, I was really, really keen on doing a rural term, just because of the fact that, to be absolutely honest, found that I didn't really enjoy city living as much as a lot of my colleagues. It didn't really feel like home, so to speak. I suppose looking back on that time in Dubbo, essentially, which I was able to get thanks to the magnificent Killer Rourke in the School of Rural Health, I absolutely loved it. I thought it was a great time. It was interesting because the COVID was really sort of starting to kick off during that time. And it was really incredible being at the beginning of a pandemic in a rural area and trying to see how we're going to deal with it in this sort of setting, which was really cool. And I also really loved Dubbo as a town, and I was really very fond of the surprisingly good coffee culture in Dubbo. I really enjoyed, spending a lot of time with our friends. There was a really big sense of community because we all moved there from being in Sydney to sort of being in Dubbo, and I thought it was really fun. We did park run. It was great. And also the community were absolutely fabulous. They really brought us in and were really inviting and welcoming, particularly under Dr. Charles Prabhakar, who was one of the respiratory physicians there, and Dr. Joel Riley. They were really quite inspiring. And being at the school, which was so close to the hospital, they were really friendly and really helpful. And I think that really solidified that, doing rural medicine actually would be great, to be absolutely honest.
What are the benefits, do you think, over a metro placement that rural has, do you think?
So I think one of the big things is that as a medical student, you're seen. Again, that was a really big thing. And when I think about how I ended up as a psychiatry trainee, because of the fact that there's so few of us and we get more one-on-one time with the consultants, they sort of get the opportunity to see you and see how you operate and see a bit of your strengths and weaknesses as well, and then give you actual feedback on who you are as a person and if you'd be suited for their specialty. And I remember a really wonderful conversation I had with the Director of Psychiatric Services in Dubbo, Dr. Keely Bateman, and he made the time to speak to me as a lowly medical student, so to speak, and say, wow, I think you'd be really good at this, and I think you'd make an excellent psychiatrist. And I just don't think that sort of one-on-one sort of mentoring you really get as easily, I guess, in a sort of metropolitan setting, because there's so many other medical students and there's so many other people that you're sort of competing for that attention with, if that makes sense.
Yeah. What about from a lifestyle perspective?
Oh, I loved it. It was so good. I mean, like, one of the big things with being in a rural town in the current sort of cost of living crisis we're in, rent is so much cheaper. And because of that, you can have a little bit more fun. Things are a little bit less stressful. And like, I didn't really have a huge amount of capital supporting me as I was going through medical school. So I think that really made it a lot more easy. So when you decide to, join a sporting team or go out with friends or do a bit of exploring, like, it was a lot easier to do because of that. And I think that has a huge boon on the sort of lifestyle we have.
To date, are there any particularly memorable moments in your career that you can share with us?
Yeah, so I think there was a couple that I thought were really cool. The first one that sort of immediately came to mind was when I was working in ED as an intern. And I think, for reference, we as interns in like sort of rural hospitals, in Orange anyway, have to step up a little bit because of the fact that we just don't have the number of senior clinicians to sort of do quite as much one-on-one sort of stuff with us. And so I remember there was one particular time having a patient who was having a STEMI. They had all the comorbidities and they were looking really grey and really unwell. And I remember like getting the ultrasound out and being able to cannulate them on the first attempt and then immediately being able to go to cath lab straight after that. It just felt really powerful as a sort of JMO at that time. You're like, oh wow, I'm really doing it. Like, this is what it's all about, which I thought was really, really cool. And I guess the second one was for me as a resident, when the way Orange works, there's about a 5-hour window in the Orange ICU where there's one doctor on. It's generally a registrar or a resident or an SRMO, essentially, and they're the only doctor in the ICU. I remember being a doctor at that time and just thinking, initially I was like, oh my God, this is so scary. Like, I'm only a second year essentially. Like, these people here are by definition the sickest people in the hospital. And it's just sort of for me, but it was a really incredible moment because you step into that experience, you step into the role and you like lean into the community of incredible nurses around you. And it was just a wonderful time. And like, I noticed that I was able to do so many things and, achieve so many things that I think I don't know I would have been able to do if I wasn't given that opportunity or experience. Yeah, and it was really amazing to sort of, like in this sort of sense of growth as a junior doctor, to be like, oh no, actually, like I can do this. I can keep really unwell people going and, I can really sort of be what the team needs of me, which I think was a really beautiful thing. It was a great moment, to be honest.
And what about advice that you've been given, Nathan, over the years? Is there anything that stands out in particular?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was very lucky. I got to spend quite a lot of time during my elective period with the would-be GP of the year, Dr. Richard Draper, in a small GP clinic in Forbes. And I remember asking Dr. Draper at the time some advice about, life as a doctor and what would make a person a better doctor and, that kind of stuff. And he gave me 2 pieces of advice. The first piece of advice he said to me was always have lunch. And I thought it was great, to be honest. And it's something I've tried to live into, but although it is quite challenging at times. And the next piece of advice, it was after he sort of sat back in his chair and he really thought about it. And it was a line from, I think it was a Western called Dirty Harry. And it said, a man's got to know his limitations. And I think what Dr. Draper then expanded on, he said that a lot of the time, if you don't know something, it's okay to ask because of the fact that the best medicine is practiced when you have that sense of vulnerability, that you don't know everything, and then you engage with the wider community that are there to draw information from so you can provide best quality practice. And I think that sort of cuts against so much of the grain that we're sort of expected to know everything. There were these human repositories of almost infinite intelligence. And I think it was really a bit of advice that I've held and kept with me throughout my formative years as a JMO, but also I hope to keep with me for the rest of my clinical life because it really has been very, very helpful. And I think a lot of people would benefit from that.
Now, you've just started your psychiatry training program. It's a fantastic field. But what drew you to the specialty in the first place?
It's a bit of a journey to talk about this, essentially. So I was really keen on being a physician. I was so keen on being a physician. I created a little physician society in Orange. I got all the people who were keen on BPT together, and we were interviewing a lot of the consultants. And I have to say, like, the physician cohort here in Orange is absolutely extraordinary. So, like, a special mention to Professor Nanya Kara, Dr. Jake Williams, and Dr. Phil Butler, as well as the wonderful Dr. Lisa Phipps. These are a cohort of the most incredibly inspiring people. The kind of care that they give their patients is extraordinary, and they sort of live, I guess, a rural medicine dream, essentially, which is absolutely amazing. And honestly, a really great privilege to be able to learn from these incredible doctors, but also glean a little bit more from their experiences. And what I think I found, which was really interesting as I was doing this interviewing of these incredible people, is that I think I really liked them more than I kind of liked the job that they were doing, if that makes sense. Like, it was really interesting. And I had this extraordinary experience where we had a pediatrician by the name of Dr. Anna Elder give us a talk midway through the year about what kind of life we wanted to live, essentially. And it really got me thinking about things. And I had a fantastic psychiatry term in the beginning of my residency. My boss, I didn't realize at the time, was the former head of RPA's psychiatry, Dr. Vicky Sundakov. And we had an absolute blast. Like, I had an incredible time. We were healing sick people, and it was really beautiful seeing the light sort of come back into these people's eyes, essentially, after, they've been so mentally unwell, and you actually see this sort of transition where they return to themselves and, oh my God, I feel so much better. And like that gratitude and that longitudinal care, I thought was really cool. So that sort of turned me around. And then it was really interesting. I had, throughout my life, I just had these little specks. Like when I was a medical student with Dr. Keely Bateman, he said, I think you'd be really good. And there was another doctor, Dr. Hugh Powell, who was one of the psychiatrists there. It's like, I think you'd be an excellent psychiatrist. And then, I remember I had a few registrars who sort of pulled me aside and like, Nathan, you'd be really good at psych, maybe you really should think about this. And I was like, oh, okay, all right. Well, I suppose at that point, it sort of all kind of crystallized, maybe this was for me. And I guess a part of me is thinking that so much of what a good psychiatrist should be is having a really good awareness of neurology. And I thought about, what it was about neurology that really inspired me. And it was that clinical excellence when it came to seeing patients, doing an excellent physical exam, being an incredible interpreter of scans, and like creating treatment and modalities that are going to sort of help people. And I realized that I could get all of that in psychiatry. And I think that sort of solidified it really for me, I think.
So many people have had such a profound impact on you, and you've had a huge number of people that have mentored you over the years. How did you manage to gather so many people?
I think I was just interested, I think it's really funny. Dr. Miriam Grotowski, when I interviewed her so long ago, I think it was one of the first interviews I ever did. Dr. Grotowski once said, I could have done really anything in medicine. I really was quite happy with all of it, and I found it all really interesting. And because of that, I kind of could have ended up anywhere. And I think it was kind of similar for myself. Like, I genuinely was quite interested in all those different aspects of healthcare. And I think when you show genuine interest, I think it really resonates with the people that are around you. One of the mentors that I didn't get the opportunity to talk about just yet was Dr. Karen Fisher, who is one of the incredible drug and alcohol consultants in Nepean. And Dr. Fisher had this beautiful way of bringing people in and making people feel seen. I think when you really engage and you really want to learn more and really want to get a bit of an understanding of what life as this kind of clinician would be like, I think people are always willing to talk and open up. And yeah, I think that's kind of how I was so fortunate. And I have been so lucky to have so many absolutely incredible people help me along in my journey. And I hope in the future I get to pay it back, because I've just been so fortunate.
Yeah. Well, on that note, what advice would you give to a medical student or JMO considering their career choices in rural medicine?
Just do it. To be absolutely honest, the dream sells itself. There was a beautiful article today that was released in one of the newspapers. It was talking about how there's no place in the east coast of Australia in a capital city that is considered affordable housing anymore. There's just not affordable. And I think, from just a pure quality of life perspective, the cost of living is so much more bearable, but also you have this better quality of life. Like the air is fresher. There's, the countryside is beautiful. Like I live in Orange at the moment and I'm surrounded by wineries. There's 4 seasons here. It's absolutely stunning. Also, I think this is something that cannot be stated enough, particularly as a JMO. You will often move to a rural hospital with a cohort of around 20 people. I was so fortunate that the cohort that I moved here with were just extraordinary. They're absolutely wonderful human beings. And because all of these people have moved to a certain place, they want to create a sense of community too. So there's this beautiful opportunity to have this incredible community filled with people that are like-minded, who are about your age, who also are going through the same thing you are. And I think that's just the most extraordinary experience. When you look at and treat people, there is a certain sense of gratitude you see when patients in particular will say, thanks for coming, thanks for being here, thanks for helping out. And I think, the rural cohort in general, I've found anyway, a very grateful cohort of people to look after. And I think that makes the job a lot more rewarding as well, I think is really, really good.
Well, your passion and your curiosity and your drive cannot be questioned at all, certainly just from this interview. So it's all making sense to me. As we look forward though, Nathan, say in 10 years' time, where do you see yourself?
So hopefully, should everything go well, I would like to be sort of practicing in a public setting. So I'd like to be doing, 2 to 3 days in an acute sort of service. And I'd also like to have a private sort of clinic or like a specialist interest clinic looking at mood disorders, essentially. And I'd also like try and really work quite hard to try and find that balance between that clinician scientist. They're not just treating people in front of you, that's also trying to do the work that will help people in the future do a bit better as well, which I think would be really nice. I'd also really like to work overseas and spend some time in the UK. I think that'd be wonderful. And I'd really like a dog, essentially. That'd be really nice.
Dr. Nathan Blake, a Stage 1 psychiatry registrar at Orange Health Service. This is Destination Medicine. Thanks for listening. Regional training hubs are supported by funding from the Australian Government under the Rural Health Multidisciplinary Training Program.